Espresso Talk Today community. You are tuning in to another sizzling episode of the Espresso Talk Today podcast show. This is your host, Ama Robin. Akwaba, my brothers, sisters, and gender non-conforming individuals to this Black Empowerment podcast show. Now, y'all, we talk a lot about racism and its ugly head a lot. But what happens when we turn that energy, that ugly energy, that prejudice onto ourselves? Yep, I'm talking about when we Black folks act prejudiced against, ourselves. Sounds wild, right? Stay with me here. But before we dive in, hit that subscribe button if you haven't already. And if you're feeling this show, share it with your fam, your crew, your circle, everyone in your community. Now, grab that espresso and close the door behind you. We're going to get deep and real. Okay, what is she talking about? Prejudice against ourselves? Is that really a thing? I have to tell you, fam, it most definitely is. It is called internalized racism. We are a Black Empowerment podcast show, and we talk a lot about racism. You know that. Structural racism, systemic racism, interpersonal racism. That's the one many people use to define racism. But there's also internalized racism. Well, what is it? At its core, internalized racism refers to the situation where individuals of a marginalized racial group, like Black people, adopt, accept, and act upon racist beliefs, stereotypes, and prejudices against their own group and against themselves. It's when the negative messages surrounding Black identity are taken in and believed by Black people about themselves as Black people and about other Black folks. This is definitely a thing, and it's a terrible thing. But where does it come from? I think you all know what I'm going to say, and I'm not going to hold back. The roots of all anti-Black racism is white supremacy. A belief in the supremacy of white people and the use of white supremacist structures and systems to maintain the supremacy of white people. That's the foundation. That's where it all comes from. Let's look a little more closely. The roots of internalized racism can be traced back to times of slavery, colonization, and segregation. Of course, slavery came first. Over the centuries, Black people and other racial minorities were subjected to a constant barrage of messages that devalued their worth, our culture, and our existence. And it overvalued, I'm going to say it, the worth, culture, and existence of white culture, of white people. This messaging, though, the less overt today, although it still exists, because I see it everywhere, still lingers in American society and in other Western societal structures. Remember when I talked about my 6th grade social studies class when we studied Black history for a day? It only showed Black people as enslaved, lowly victims, but it showed white people as heroic and courageous. And yes, it superiorized the white students and inferiorized the Black students. We were only 11 years old. We were already being taught to be prejudiced against ourselves. The internalized racism was already being shoved into us. The media plays a huge role in shaping perceptions. We all know that. Historically, the media outlets have often portrayed Black people in very narrow, limited, stereotypical, and negative ways. And over time, these portrayals influenced how we perceived other Black people and how we perceive ourselves. I mean, that's pretty wicked, isn't it? There are also societal structures and institutions that are built on white supremacy. From education, even from kindergarten to the workplace, racial biases are deeply ingrained in many societal systems. These biases reinforce ideas of racial hierarchy, putting white people on top, and the supposed inferiority, I have in quotations, of certain racial groups like black people. And this hits close to home, peer and family influences. Internalized racism is passed down from generation to generation. Comments from family members about skin tone, hair texture, and other racially related features can influence how we perceive our features and our black identity. But it goes deeper. It also influences how we view our abilities, our opportunities, our competency, and our future. Well-meaning black parents can sometimes give limited views about the future and about the potential of their children. They're trying to protect their children from harm and from disappointment, but children internalize these messages of their inferiority. They internalize this very quickly. And once it's in there, it's hard to get it out. I know that from experience. It's hard to change the perception of inferiority. It can be done, and it has been done. And we're going to talk about that a little bit later today. But to wrap up this part, internalized racism is the internalization, that's a long word, of negative racial stereotypes and prejudices against our other black people, our own racial group. It's been used against black people since Europeans landed on the African continent. Its origins are deeply rooted in historical oppression, media portrayals, societal structures, and sometimes even family beliefs. Addressing and overcoming internalized racism requires awareness. Awareness, I always begin with awareness. Education, sometimes mental health support, and absolutely community support and engagement. These are all good steps. But addressing internalized racism really requires the total dismantling of structural anti-black racism at its foundation. And first dismantling the white supremacist structures and restoring black culture and history to its rightful place on the local and global scene. You need both. I want to emphasize once more that internalized racism is not a flaw or failure of black people. It's not our fault. Instead, it's a product of centuries of systemic racism and white supremacist structures and beliefs. This oppressive system has perpetuated negative images and stereotypes of black people and positioned whiteness as the ideal or the standard. But white supremacy isn't just about the overt acts of racism or hate. It's a system that in very subtle ways and very consistent ways reinforces the idea of white superiority across all facets of life, from the media and education to economics and social interactions, even between people, even within marriages sometimes. This constant bombardment of negative messages and subtle reinforcements can lead us to internalize these views, even unconsciously. Actually, I'd say mostly unconsciously. But human beings naturally absorb and reflect the environment that's around them. We think we all understand that. When we are consistently faced with the narrative that portrays blackness in a negative or inferior light, it is not surprising that many individuals, many people, many of us start to internalize these views. But the origin of these negative messages isn't Black culture or Black people. It's a white-centric, it's a Eurocentric perspective that's been dominant and oppressive for centuries. Rather than focusing on the manifestations of internalized racism within people, the emphasis could be on challenging and dismantling the larger white supremacist structures that perpetuate these harmful messages. Frankly, I really think that both need to be done. By changing the broader narrative and challenging systemic racism, we can start to diminish the roots of internalized racism. There's one last part I want to talk about here, and that's, empowerment through awareness. I always come back to awareness. I meditate a lot, so awareness really comes up. By recognizing the systemic origins of internalized racism, we can start to unlearn these internalized beliefs. Unlearning is really difficult. Really, it's about learning something new, unlearning the truth and replacing it with what is the truth. Knowledge of the origins and mechanisms of internalized racism can be really empowering and allow us to challenge these beliefs actively and to reclaim our sense of self and our cultural pride. In essence, at its core, while internalized racism manifests within us, its roots are deeply embedded in the systemic structure of white supremacy, and by understanding this, we can address this issue without blaming anyone, without blaming other Black people, that is. We can blame the white supremacist structures, without blaming the Black people, us who are experiencing it. And instead, we should be really focusing our sights on the larger oppressive system that is actively working. White supremacy is the problem. I'm going to keep saying it. White supremacy is the problem. It is the problem. For several centuries, there's been a concerted effort, often conscious and sometimes unconscious, to encourage Black people to believe in white supremacy and to believe in our own inferiority. This is probably one of the most insidious things that a culture or a person can do to another, to make them accept their own inferiority. Can you believe that? Black people, we've been encouraged to do this for centuries. And I say encouraged in quotations, but it's more complicated than that. We've been punished for refusing to accept an inferior status. Punished for that. And this has been done through lynching, through beatings, and through incarceration, through refusing to hire us for employment, through firing us from employment, labeling us as troublemakers, labeling us as dangerous, ignorant, or even criminal. If you label someone enough, people begin to believe it. Doesn't matter if it's true. If they hear it enough, they'll believe it. Remember the story of Ruby Bridges, who I discussed this in a previous podcast show, she was age 6. She was the first girl to desegregate, a Black girl to desegregate an all-white school in Louisiana. She was isolated and threatened every single day. Her parents lost their jobs, and these were people who had refused to accept inferiority. And look at what happened. We've also been encouraged to accept white supremacy. Black people who praise white society and reject their own Blackness are often rewarded with great jobs, high societal status, lots of money in nice homes, acceptance in white spaces, and a secure place in history, even though that place isn't true. We call these people Uncle Toms or Auntie Janes, but they are highly valued members of white society. White society needs people like that. Remember those 5 Black police officers who attacked Tyree Nichols? Basically they killed him. This wasn't their first attack in the Black community. Why did they do it? Because they wanted acceptance and they wanted the perks from white society. and they got it for a while. But there are many others. There are many others who do this kind of thing in different ways, sometimes in the same way, but others in different ways. And some are in higher places and higher positions and more powerful positions. I'm not going to name names. Again, we know who they are, and they know who they are. This isn't out of fear. This is because we know who they are. The point is that we are rewarded for supporting white supremacy and Black inferiority, and we're punished for fighting white supremacy and demanding equality. What kind of society does this? But here we are now. And now it's time for us to dive a little deeper and to get a little more specific. So let's talk about 7 ways that we are prejudiced towards ourselves. We're going to talk about that when we get back, but now it's time for our first break. So let's take that short break and we're going to breathe for a minute. This has been some heavy stuff here, so I think we do need to take some time to breathe and to be a little calm. When I need to be calm, I like to breathe. I hope you do too. See you in a minute, and we will look at the 7 ways that we might be prejudiced against ourselves. See you soon.
Gonna get a lot of dough. Anything is possible.
I love this song. I just love this song.
Turn me up in the headphone. Yeah. Trying to get a lot of dough and dirt through all the obstacles, cause anything is possible. Yeah. Oh man, I got a lot of gold. Stack that bread and vomit nose. Anything is possible. Yeah. Trying to get a lot of dough and dirt through all the obstacles, cause anything is possible.
We're back. Let's get to it. Number 1, we devalue Black culture. You ever heard someone say, "Oh, I'm not into Black music," or "I don't dance like that," or even worse, they diss our own festivals and our heritage. And but this isn't about taste. Each of us is an individual with our own tastes and our own interests, our own likes and dislikes. But this is about a mindset that anything Black is inherently lesser. And fam, that's just messed up. And we know it's not true. But as I said, we are taught to devalue our culture. We're encouraged to devalue it and to uplift white Western culture. I used to go to the Nutcracker Ballet every Christmas. My parents always took me. And I still do when I get the chance. But my teachers, who were white, were thrilled to hear me talk about my interest in the ballet, in the Nutcracker. But I also talked about Kizomba, which is a dance from Angola. I absolutely love that dance. It looks a lot like salsa, but Kizomba came first. My teachers clearly did not show any interest in any kind of African dance. They merely tolerated it and hoped that I would stop. I was considered kind of a radical person, even if I'm talking about this when I'm 8 years old. And as a kid, I knew which was more acceptable. I could detect it, but I refused to devalue Black culture. I just knew when to stop talking about it and to go back to praising ballet. That's kind of a white-pleasing thing I was doing there. I'll admit it. But I also did enjoy the ballet too. I got more on that later, but we got to stop devaluing our culture. And yes, this is a form of internalized racism. Number 2, emphasizing negative stereotypes. Remember that one guy who joked, "Oh, I'm on Black people time," when he was late? Okay, yeah, we've always talked about CP time, but that's different. Or there was someone saying, "Well, I'm not good at math because, well, I don't even want to finish that one." Self-stereotyping is not a joke. It's really like volunteering to wear chains. Or sometimes we pretend to be the angry Black woman or the thug that they expect of us. Or we talk about how, I'm different from other Black people because they behave so badly. And that reflects on all of us who are trying to be decent. Wow, boy, just even thinking of people saying that makes me cringe. But it does make me sick to think of that. Remember President Obama talking about how black men got to start being responsible fathers. They got to stop being deadbeat dads. He gave a whole speech about that. White people were loving it. And guess what? He knew that that was BS. Sorry, I can't say the real word. I'm keeping it kind of, G right now. Because the data shows that black fathers spend more time with their kids than any other racial or ethnic group. And President Obama knew that. But he put out that stereotype. I think that was his form of white pleasing, because that's how he views black fathers. Even though he is a black father that spends time with his kids. And yes, I'm saying that President Obama showed signs of internalized racism in more ways than one, really, but I'm not going to go any deeper than that. But this really stood out because it was such a stereotype that has no basis in fact. The data doesn't prove that. But he really betrayed black fathers in that speech. Number 3, preference for white standards of beauty. We all have that friend who's obsessed with looking less black and more white, whether it's, lighter skin creams or straightening their kinky hair till it screams. It's all about fitting into someone else's idea of beauty. This is a hard one, though. We have all been confronted, all of us, with Eurocentric beauty standards and told that it is the standard of beauty. This is what we should all be trying to be. White, blonde, skinny, no hips or lips, pale skin. We have been told from every direction that this is the standard of beauty. At the same time, we're told that our black skin, our brown skin, our lips, our hips, our hair are not and never can be beautiful. It's particularly because they don't look like white European standards. I remember watching Serena Williams on the tennis court in her early days. She was so graceful and so skilled and so muscular and strong and beautiful. But and she was winning too, she was kicking everybody's. But as I listened to the commentators, they were saying that she didn't look like a tennis player. And guess what? The commentators, who were white of course, believed that tennis was a white sport. If you're not tiny and a wafy little white girl, then you could not really be a tennis player. And some black people said the same thing. They saw tennis as a white sport too, and couldn't accept black people excelling on the court or even playing tennis and just enjoying themselves. They said that's a white thing. Of course, we know that Serena is the greatest of all time. And she was graceful and strong and poised and intelligent on the court and off of it. Then I heard my minister, wow, this really always stuck with me. She's a black woman, talk about how Serena and Venus too, changed the look and the shape of tennis. They uplifted it in every way. And actually, they made it more inclusive for women of all body shapes. And it's about time that we embrace our melanin magic and our Afro glory and just realize that, we are beautiful too. All right, moving on. Number 4, avoiding association with other black people. Ever met folks who say, I don't vibe with black people much, or they dodge black events or black gatherings? And this is not about personal preference. It's deeper. It's a sign of seeing their own community in a negative light, seeing their own people in a negative light. And I'm going to get 100 with you because there was a time when I didn't want to be around black people. Why? I thought that I wouldn't be accepted. I had wanted to go to an HBCU, but I thought I wouldn't fit in. I thought, that they all wear expensive clothes and dance and, they're speaking a certain way and they're all just looking perfect. And I know that's crazy. We're not a monolithic group. And yes, there were some people doing that. But I found my community. Who is interested in politics and history and fitness and the struggle. And yes, they're black people. No, I'm not going to vibe with all black people. I don't vibe with my whole family, but I definitely find that group that I do vibe with and who vibe with me. But carrying that internalized racism makes it hard to vibe with other Black people whom you see as inferior and don't want to associate with because they are not like you. This is one way that the slave master kept us apart, divided and conquered. It worked then, and it works now. We got to recognize this as internalized racism and make a serious change. We can't let this continue. Number 5, seeking validation from non-Black people. Yeah, only non-Black people. Y'all know the type. The ones who are constantly trying to be the acceptable Black person. Always seeking validation. Always needing that non-Black approval stamp. We've talked about this a lot. The white-pleasing behaviors and the seeking white approval. That's a little bit different. That's a coping or survival tool, as we discussed. It's not seeking a stamp from white people. But we have been carefully taught from slavery, now, from slavery to up until this point, that we want the masters to approve of us. We want their validation. On the flip side, we stop caring what our community, family, or even friends think. Of course, we should not seek validation from anyone or everyone, but when we actively seek validation from white people because they are white people, we got to stop and take a different course. We got to stop putting our self-worth in someone else's hands. Number 6, and this one is the silent killer. Negative self-talk. Thinking, oh, I didn't get that gig because Black people are not good at that, or I won't make it in this field because of my skin color. Well, this stops us before we even start. This is the power of white supremacist structures. They make you question yourself. They don't have to do anything. They just sit back and watch us do it to ourselves. That negative self-talk has you doubting yourself, questioning your competence and skills, whispering that you don't belong, or making you feel different and inferior. That is the white supremacist machine in action. It doesn't even have to get in your face or call you the N-word. It lets you do all the work. You'll never succeed or trust yourself if you listen to that negative self-talk, that's really the voice of racism whispering in your ear. We got to cut that chain of thought. It's doing us no good. Here's the last one, number 7, rejecting our own physical features. I'm talking about those offhand comments like, oh, I wish my nose was slimmer, or if only I was a few shades lighter, or I wish that my hair was naturally blonde, or straight up, I wish I was white. Our features tell stories, histories, and legacies. Let's honor them. When I visited Ghana and Senegal, I saw so many people who looked like me. It was amazing. I wasn't the tallest person in the room or the thickest person there or the only one with black or brown skin. And I'm happy that with my features now. But when I was younger, I felt so different around the skinny little white girls with long blonde hair. And this makes me think of the principal dancer, the prima ballerina, Misty Copeland. I just read her book and learned about all the difficulties she went through when she was training as a ballerina. She was taller, she was more muscular, she was hippier, she had bigger breasts than the white ballerinas. She was told to lengthen, which is a buzzword for lose weight, because she wasn't bony like the other ballerinas, because she was muscular. And she was told that she would never be a prima ballerina because of her skin tone and her body shape. But guess what? She persisted, and she is a stunning, gifted, skilled, and amazing dancer and person. It wasn't easy because of the racism that she faced, but fortunately, she was not prejudiced against herself. She didn't listen to the racists who wanted to keep ballet white. She just worked to be the best dancer that she could be, and she is one of the best in the world. I highly recommend her memoir, Life in Motion. It's uplifting, passionate, and all true. You can find it in the Black Empowerment Bookstore on the Espresso Talk Today website. But anyway, stop listening to the racist media, the racist sportscasters, the racist dance coaches, the racist modeling agencies, or the other racist people who uplift Eurocentric features and work to quiet that racist voice in your head that superiorizes white Western characteristics over your own amazing African features. So, these are the 7 ways to recognize people and yourself who are prejudiced against themselves or ourselves, and the 7 ways that you might be racist against yourself. We all have held these beliefs. We all might still hold some of them. That is the work of the white supremacist machinery. It is constantly active, constantly doing it. Let's take another break here. Let's breathe, or think, or stretch, or do push-ups, whatever makes you feel better. This is some deep stuff here, and it's not easy to deal with. You do you. I'll see you in a minute.
Anything is possible. Turn me up in the headphone. Yeah. Trying to get a lot of dough and dirt through all the obstacles, cause anything is possible. Yeah. Oh man, I got a lot of goals. Stack that bread and vomit nose. Anything is possible. Yeah. Trying to get a lot of dough and dirt through all the obstacles, cause anything is possible. Oh man, I got a lot of
Aquaba back, beautiful people. I hope you took some time to breathe or to just think, because we've talked about a lot, but we have a lot more to talk about. I just want to make it clear, this is not about shaming anyone. It's about awakening. Recognizing these signs is the first step. You know how I always think of awareness. Awareness is the beginning. If you see yourself in any of these situations, it is okay. It really is. But let's work to uplift ourselves and our community and our culture and our history. That's what we're here for. And that's what we're doing today. So, okay, where do we go from here? We have peeled back the layers of internalized racism, but we're just getting started, and we've seen some of the signs of internalized racism, but we're not going to leave it there. Espresso Talk today is all about solutions, and that's what we're going to focus on now. Let's brew some up. Get ready, get comfortable. And we're going to start with the basics, with the foundation, because that's where it all begins. First, education. Educate and immerse. Dive deep into Black history, into Black culture, into our achievements. When we truly understand our roots and our accomplishments, when we understand our rich tapestry of our heritage, there's no room for feeling inferior. So, join a Black book club. You all know how I love to read, so I'm a part of book clubs. Watch documentaries or engage in community events or all of the above, and there's so much more. Remember, we have to always keep learning and we have to keep immersing. And really, it just feels great. It's not work. It's fun. Okay, solution number 2. When I say solution, I'm just saying these are suggested solutions. Challenge negative thoughts. I'm going to repeat that because it seems obvious, but we forget it a lot. Challenge negative thoughts. When those self-deprecating, racially charged thoughts creep in, challenge them. Ask yourself, is this what I truly believe? Or is it something that I've been conditioned to think? This is going to require you put your ego aside, you check your ego at the door, and to really get real about what you believe. And if we've all been subjected to conditioning and to propaganda, but we really just got to admit it. If that's the case, and when you do, awareness, that's awareness, you can let it go. And you can replace those thoughts with affirmations about your worth, your beauty, your capabilities, your competency, your skills. You, you are enough. Always remember that. We challenge negative thoughts, and you are enough. And then, this is the third one, and this is my personal favorite. Surround yourself with positive influences. My parents were always talking about how, hang out with the right people, avoid the wrong people, and all that kind of stuff. And I just ignored that. But they were absolutely right, because who you are, who you're surrounded by, really influences how you think, who you are, and all of that. So, whether it's your family, whether it's friends, whether it's social media, and sometimes family members, you got to put them aside too. Yeah, I'm not letting them off the hook. Make sure that you're surrounded by people and platforms that uplift you, that celebrate blackness, and that promote black excellence. Make sure that they are whoever's around you, uplifts and accepts and respects and honors Black history and blackness and your blackness. Make sure you do. Make sure you're one of those positive influences. Okay, and well, this is another one of my favorites. This is the fourth one. Do not ever underestimate the power of therapy and support groups. You all know that I am a huge believer in therapy and counseling. Sometimes we need that professional touch or community to help us unravel our thoughts and confront our internalized beliefs and heal from past traumas, heal from current traumas. You also know that I believe in culturally competent therapy. Culturally competent therapy. Remember, we had a show when we talked about Black psychology with Dr. Ethiopia Jackson. She was the head at the time of the Association of Black Psychologists. Amazing woman. And she pointed out the importance of understanding and appreciating one's culture when counseling someone. Traditional therapy, white Western therapy, utilizes Eurocentric thinking and experiences and language that encourages therapists to pathologize Black behaviors and thought patterns rather than examine, how they influence a person's emotions and life experiences. So I highly recommend, if you choose to go the therapy route, and I really hope you do, because everyone can use a little tweak from time to time, then I highly recommend the Association of Black Psychologists. Their website is called abpsi.org, apsi.org. Don't try to write this down if you don't get nervous about that. It's on our website and on the Habari page, on the Espresso Talk Today website. And I'm going to repeat it in the outro, but go to our website and you'll be able to find out that information there. And lastly, speak out and share. We are not alone in this. By sharing our experiences and feelings, we help others and we help ourselves. A lot of us are struggling in silence. We're sitting next to each other, struggling in silence, and we don't need to do that. It just takes one person to speak up. And then all of a sudden, the floodgates open. And when we raise all of our voices, it creates a symphony of empowerment and self-love. I mean, this may sound kind of corny, but it really is true. I'm always talking about the importance of community. Find yours. Find a place where you can be unapologetically you and speak up. And remember, facing internalized racism is a journey. It's not a destination. I love for it to be, I faced that, so it's over. No, it's a journey. Every step you take towards shaking off those internalized prejudices is a win, a huge win. It's a win for you, and it's a win for our community too. Well, I think it's time for one last breather break here. Then we're going to wind it down. And I have some extra information that I think you'll want to know. But we've covered a lot here. let's take a little breath. Let's just calm it down, go within, or take a walk, whatever you want to do, but you're only going to have a minute, and I'll see you then. Welcome back, courageous people. And yes, I call you courageous because you are, because you're still here. And that takes courage. Let's end on a positive and uplifting note. Yes, racism is here with us, probably here to stay. Internalized racism is within you, and you can change that. You are strong. You have so much potential. I see it every single day. I see the accomplishments. I see the courage. I see the growth. I see the love. I see the collective power of the Black community. Let's be proud of our identity. And by the way, I got a great book on embracing your identity. It's a great free book. I'll give you more on that later. But let's support each other. Let's uplift each other and know that you are not alone. The ancestors are moving mountains just to see you rise. Congratulations for showing the courage and character to examine your thoughts, your actions, and your thought patterns. Internalized racism is a difficult, scary, and somewhat embarrassing topic. Facing it does take courage, and you showed it today. Well, community, my fam, beautiful people, courageous people, that's our deep dive about being prejudiced against yourself. We're going to wrap it up now. Think about it, reflect on it, discuss it, and please share this episode and let's spark some conversations. This has been your host, Alma Robin, with Espresso Talk Today. So stay woke, stay empowered, and always, always, always love yourself. Remember, knowledge is power, but self-love, that is invincible. I mentioned several important resources that you might want to examine. I hope you do, because they're really good ones. I talked about Misty Copeland. Remember the principal dancer for the American Ballet Company? Her memoir is called Life in Motion, and she shares her journey to becoming the first Black principal dancer with the American Ballet Company. You can find this book on our bookshop at the Espresso Talk Today website, Life in Motion. Highly recommended. And, as I promised, the Association of Black Psychologists, abpsi.org, abpsi.org. They have a great directory where you can find a Black mental health professional, and they hold regular healing circles. They're called Sawubona circles. They're amazing, really. The Association of Black Psychologists at abpsi.org. You can find it on the Espresso Talk Today website at the Habari page. They are amazing, and I highly recommend getting a culturally competent therapist. And I would be remiss if I didn't mention my ebook called Embracing Your Blackness, and it is available as a free download on the Espresso Talk Today website. It's a great resource to help you examine internalized racism and to help you, provide steps to help you embrace your Blackness. And you'll see, I'm kind of with you. There's steps, and I'm there with you every step of the way. You don't do this alone. So remember, my fellow warriors, know this deep in your soul that you are not alone. Your experiences, your stories, your triumphs, they all matter. And if you want to keep discussing or just reading about these issues, then I recommend that you subscribe to my weekly Black Empowerment newsletter called The Nomo Beat. We discuss lots of different issues there. You can get your dose of Black empowerment every week. There's never a dull moment, but lots of growth moments. You can find it at the Espresso Talk Today website, espressotalktoday.com, or on Instagram at Ama Robin L. That's Ama underscore Robin underscore the letter L. Join us on Instagram to discuss these issues, your thoughts, and find an uplifting and safe space for you. Again, on Instagram at Ama Robin L. I'm Ama Robin for Espresso Talk Today. And remember, now more than ever, strength, soul, and reparations. Ashe, community.